Hey everyone, so you're a first-time home buyer or you just haven't bought a home in a while and you want a little refresher? Well, today I'm going to be going over what the home buying process looks like in Florida. I'm specifically in the Treasure Coast area of Florida, but this process will look the same all throughout Florida. Buying a home is obviously one of the largest purchases any of us will ever make, so I want to make sure that I do my best to give you all of the steps and the process to make sure that you are ready for when you are buying your home. So I broke the home buying process into a few phases that we will be covering. The phases are the pre-market phase, the in-market phase, and then the under contract phase. Now there is no specific timeline for these phases because everyone's situation is different. You can be buying in a year, 6 months, 3 months, it doesn't matter. The timeline can be different for anyone, but the process is still going to be the same. So once we get through all of these phases, if you still have any questions, please feel free to comment them below or contact me directly. Starting off the home buying process, we are going to start in the pre-market phase. Now this phase is really for focusing on getting our ducks in a row and making sure that we would get accepted for financing and to kind of figure out what we will be looking for in your home. This phase has 2 stages to focus on. We're going to have the financing prep and the home search prep. So now we're going to start with the first stage, and that is the financing prep. The majority of home buyers are going to need a loan to afford their house. So we want to make sure that whenever you are ready to buy a home, that you would get approved for your loan. There is nothing more frustrating than waiting and saving up, and then you get to the timeline where you are ready to buy and you want to buy a home, only to talk to a lender and they tell you that you have a few issues that you need to work out, and it just kind of messes up your whole timeline and your plan. So we want to make sure that when you want to buy a home, that you will get approved for your loan. So at this point, I'm just going to be going over the things that you should be striving for in order to get pre-approved for your loan. I'm not going to go into great detail on everything. I'm just going to give you kind of like brief tips in order to get approved. But if you want more in detail about the loan requirements and different loan types, I typically go to the same YouTube channel. It's called Win the House You Love. And the YouTuber Kevin is awesome. He really goes into great detail over all the loan requirements each year. So if you have any other questions about loans, I would definitely turn to that YouTube channel. And his videos tend to be a little bit longer, and because they're in such great detail, so make sure to have a notepad out and make sure to take notes while watching his videos. Okay, the first criteria that we're gonna kind of cover here that you should be striving for is to at least get around a 620 credit score. Now there are loan packages for lower, but just to be on the safe side, 620 is kind of where you want to start, so you'll have access to more loan options. Criteria number 2 we're gonna be striving for is to pay off as much debt as possible. And if you can, focus on the high interest debt first because they typically hold a higher weight with the lender. Now we're gonna touch on how debt affects your loans because lenders look at what's called the debt to income ratio. Each loan is going to have different requirements for their debt to income ratio. So we're just gonna do an example using the FHA loan. Say they want 46% on the front end and 56% on the back end. Front end means just the mortgage payment only. So that means what they're going to do is take your monthly income, and 46% of that is the amount that they would approve you for your mortgage payment. Now the back end is where the lender takes your mortgage payment and adds it to all your other monthly bills. So 56% of your monthly income is what the lender will approve you to spend on your mortgage payment, as well as any other debts and bills you may have monthly. So let's just do a quick example here. If your monthly income is $5,000 a month, that would leave your front end at about $23,000 that can be designated towards a mortgage. And your back end would be about $2,800. So that means you have about $500 to play with for your other debts and bills. Now say your monthly bills and expenses were $1,000 a month. Now your front end is only gonna look at $1,800 because it has to only be up to $2,800. So even though your front end looks like it could be $2,300, because of the extra debts that you have, it's actually reducing how much of a mortgage payment the lender is going to allow you to have. So now I hope that you see how important lowering those debts are as much as possible so that you can get approved for that ideal mortgage payment. The tip that I would have for you is to take 0.56 of your monthly income and now choose an ideal mortgage payment that you believe you could handle and that you would like, and subtract that from the 0.56 of your monthly income. Now whatever we have left over here is obviously the max amount of debts that you can be paying each month that the lender would approve you for. So if you are over that amount, you now have a number that you can strive for in limiting it and getting it into that range that it needs to be. so that 0.56 works for that mortgage payment. I hope that makes sense. I know I went through that and it's a lot of numbers just coming out of thin air and just throwing it up. So I hope that makes sense. If not, just comment below and I would definitely talk more about it or answer any questions you would have on it. Now, criteria number 3 is having the down payment and closing costs saved up. Your down payment can run you anywhere from 3 to 20% down, and the closing costs can vary between 3% or as high as 6%. Now, this is typically where a lot of home buyers struggle the most because it is setting aside large sums of money that may be tough to save up each month. Well, that is exactly why I had this third on the list, because as long as you are focusing on building up your credit score and paying off your debts, you are going to have grants and down payment assistance programs available to you that are going to help you with your down payment and closing costs. However, having more money down definitely helps you, so what I would advise is once you kind of get your debts in order or you are getting close to it, that is when you should really start putting a lot of effort into saving up as much money as you can. Now, I know everyone's time frames are going to affect this as well, because not everyone can save up as much money as they want if they're trying to move faster. So if that is the case for you and you don't have the time frame to particularly save up all of the money you need, then grants, assistance, and seller concessions are going to be the strategy for you. The fourth criteria is stable income for 2 years. Now, this is not mandatory, but most lenders like to see it in order to approve people for the loan because they want to make sure that you've got money coming in so that you can obviously pay back the loan, and also make sure that your taxes are up to date as well, especially if you are a 1099 worker. Now, like I said, this isn't necessarily mandatory, especially if you have more savings or really good debt, or a co-signer here could really help you out. But the 2 years is kind of the norm that they look for, but like I said, there are ways around it. Now on to the home search prep. This is the stage where we are creating boxes that we hope to check once we are approved and ready to buy a home, using what we just went over to start creating our ideal house on paper. We can do this by taking that ideal mortgage payment and seeing what that purchase price would look like at the current interest rates. You can use Zillow for this, of course, or if you are working with an agent, we do typically have some type of home search app that we can get you set up with. And I find these very useful because we get notified, or we can see all of the homes that you favorite on those apps, so that we can get a better understanding and idea of the type of homes that you really like. And then that also helps us keep our eyes out for homes that we would find and would think would be really good for you. Once you have spent some time looking in the desired city at that price range, you'll start understanding what the standard is in that price range in that area, so we can start creating the boxes. My advice to you when making these check boxes is to start with the most priority and then work your way down. So start with your absolute needs in a house, and then also have your more wants list that we can get later on, but we have to make sure that we can hit our absolute needs first. Your needs could be how many bed and baths, the location, maybe it's closer to work, closer to the school, the square footage, the year built, things like that, whereas the wants could be things like a pool or having a den or certain materials in the house like quartz countertops, things like that. So basically what you're going to do is get that needs list and then put those filters in that price range, in that desired city. And once you notice that there is enough inventory with your needs, and then you can go onto that wants list and start adding them into the filters and try to find as many houses as you can that check off as many boxes as possible. Now that you have taken care of all of the prep work, we are now going to move on to the in-market phases, which are going to be a little bit more straightforward and streamlined. Now, for these in-market steps and even the under contract steps, we're going to be using a lot of vendors. So I have attached in the description a contact list of all of the lenders and vendors that I currently use. And I don't receive anything from these people, I just use them and I have good experiences with them. So I'm going to keep referring them to people because I trust them. So if you want a list of vendors and lenders, it is in there in the description, so you can check it out, just so when you're doing your research, you have somewhere to start. So now the first step of being in market is to get your pre-approval. So you are going to meet with lenders or meet with the lender that you already know you want to use. You may have an idea in your head from all the prep work you've done on which loan option you may want to go with. So go in there and ask about that loan and see if there's any other options that the lender may advise you to do, any other better options they may have for you, because when you're working hand in hand with the lender, sometimes they can have more personalized options that you may not have thought of. So this is the first step. Once you get this pre-approval letter, we are now ready to get moving into the home search. When you talk with a lender, they may have more personalized options for you, and they will help you solidify your financing plan to buying a home. Now that you are pre-approved, it is now time to start house shopping. So now in the home search phase, you and your agent will already have a criteria established that you will both look at daily until we're able to find some homes that you are most interested in. And then when you find the ones that you really want to see, that is when the agent will schedule the showings and you will both go to see these beautiful homes. Now, the amount of showings that you may have can vary greatly amongst home buyers, but since you've done all the prep work in the pre-phases to make sure that you have a better understanding of what is available in the market and what boxes you can have checked, you'll have a better understanding and you'll be more comfortable committing to a house on your showings. Because I do think that that is one thing a lot of home buyers do struggle with, is having a real grasp of what's in the market. So they may pass on a few homes that they saw early on in the process just until they were able to actually get comfortable on what is available in the market. And more often than not, the home buyer realizes later on in the process that they passed on a home that they would have loved, but they just weren't comfortable committing because they thought the next house would check more boxes. So that is a common pitfall that I notice a lot of home buyers fall into, but like I said, since you've done the prep work, you'll be more comfortable in committing when you find the right house. And speaking of the right house, once you have found the one that you know you want, it checks the right amount of boxes, and you are ready to move forward, it is now time to move into the pre-offer phase. So now the terms that you are going to be able to get in your offer are going to vary on a few things like the state of the market, the competition for a house, the amount of days on market the house has been, or any issues with the house that are shrinking the buyer pool, things like that. The terms that you'll likely be discussing with your agent are going to be things like the purchase price first, obviously, and next would be the escrow deposit and how much of your down payment you're comfortable putting into escrow, and then deciding whether or not you want to do a second escrow deposit after the inspection period. The point of the escrow deposits are to show the sellers that you have the cash for your down payment already on hand, so they're just feeling a little bit more comfortable with accepting your offer because they know it's going to close. Now next, you will be deciding whether or not you would pick the title company or the seller will pick the title company. And now typically whoever decides the title company is also going to be the one that is paying the title. So if you're someone that's trying to not have to pay as much at the closing table, this can save you a couple $1,000s by just letting the seller decide which title company to use. The next term to discuss is the amount of days you're going to need to close. The standard is typically 30 days to closing, but if you can get loan commitment between 21 or 25 days, this will look really enticing as well to put in your offer. So definitely talk that over with your lender before putting it in the offer to make sure it would actually happen. But obviously sellers are going to want to close earlier if they have the option for the most part. So you can see how just shortening the closing date on your offer by 5 days can make your offer appear stronger as well. Now the last terms of the offer we're going to be talking about don't apply to everyone, but this would be the seller concession. So if you're someone that is looking for help with the closing costs, down payment, or buying down your interest rate, and this is something you would discuss with your agent and make sure that that gets put into your offer as well. Okay, so now that the terms are in place, your agent will write up the contract and send it over to the seller's agent, and hopefully the seller just signs and agrees to all your terms. But there is a chance that they will send over a counter, and it may be a little bit of back and forth with the terms until they are just right. But once everyone is happy with the terms and signs, you are now under contract. So now that you are under contract, this part of the process is even more streamlined because all we're doing is just following through with the terms that we've already expressed in the offer. So on day one, once you are under contract, you are going to order your inspection as soon as possible, and then you are also going to get in contact with the title company, whether you chose them or the seller chose them, and send over your first escrow deposit via wire, and also make sure they have all the other information that they are going to need for your closing. And the next item on the list is you're going to actually go to the inspection. So you and your agent, whenever you got your inspection scheduled, will go over to the property and make sure to walk around with them, let them do their inspection, ask them questions, and listen to them when they give you what they found or what they didn't find, or the good, the bad, all of that. They're going to give you a long spiel when they're done. They're also going to email you a full report breaking everything down, so if you miss something or you need more information on it, it will be in the report, and you can also ask them when you are with the inspector. And something to keep in mind, inspections are out of pocket, so that is something that you will be paying as we go, so that could cost you a few $100s depending on the size of the house, but I just want to make sure you know that going in. Now once the inspection is done, if no issues were found, then you just move along with the process. If there were things found that you would like repaired or replaced, then we can write up what is called a repair addendum, and we send it over to the seller, and hopefully they just accept, sign it, and get those things handled before closing. Then once you're through the inspection period, it's pretty much just waiting time. Throughout this process, the title company is going to run municipal lien searches to make sure there are no expired permits or tax issues with the property, so that the title is clear, to make sure that you're not inheriting any issues with the property from a title standpoint. And anything the title company does find, they will make sure that the seller handles it prior to closing. And the title company does order a land survey on the property during this time, and that'll be on your behalf, and you will get billed for that in the closing costs as well. And at the time of the land survey, your lender is also ordering an appraisal on your behalf, which is usually out of pocket but could be in your closing costs. That can run you a few $100s as well, but again, just something to keep in mind. And the appraisal hopefully comes back and it is appraising at the price that you were under contract for, or it appraises a little bit higher than what you're under contract for, because that's not a bad thing at all, walking into some equity. However, if the appraisal comes back lower than what you were under contract for, there's going to be issue with the financing, and either you are going to have to come out of pocket with the difference between the appraised price and the purchase price, or you're gonna have to negotiate with the seller to drop the price to the appraised price. And there's also the option of seller financing in some rare cases. I just had it happen, so I have seen it. But let's just hope it was priced right, you're under contract right, and let's just hope this appraises so we can move on with the process. But let's not worry about that. It's gonna appraise and we're gonna move right on through to the next part of the process. So now once the title searches, land surveys, and appraisals are handled, now you get to sit and wait for your title commitment and loan commitment. Now once you receive the commitments from your title and loan, now we're going to schedule your final walkthrough, which can happen the day of closing or the afternoon before closing. The final walkthrough is there so that you can take a quick walk through the house to make sure the house is just as it was when you put it under contract, minus any furniture or any seller items that were in the house that they moved, but you also want to make sure there was no damage under the house while the seller was moving. And now once the final walkthrough is done, it is time to move on to the closing. The title company is going to have you wire over all the funds the day before typically, or it could be in the morning of the day of closing. They'll give you more information on that. And this is basically to make sure the money for your down payment and closing costs is already in escrow and that they have it, so that once the documents are signed, they are able to release the funds. And now that you have wired over all of the funds, it is now on to the closing day, and this is where you are going to go over to the title company, sign the boatload of paperwork, and then they are going to hand you the keys to your new home. And that is it. I hope that you found this video helpful. If you have any additional questions for me, please feel free to comment them below. And if you are looking to buy a home on the Treasure Coast, no matter what phase you are in, please feel free to call, text, or email me, and I would love to help you through the process. I appreciate you watching this video, and have a great day.